What is going on, everybody? Happy Monday. I'm Bobby Fi back here with my man Eric Sheethaver as usual. Had a fun little NFL, not sweat, but it was just a fun weekend. I always enjoy the playoffs a lot more in the NFL than I do the regular season. But we're ready to move on to basketball now. We've got the big MLK slate. We're going to be bringing you the early slate on Draftkings right now. The early slate has 9 games, so it's a doozy a little bit. Sheets, how you doing, man? What do you think of this slate?
So good. I mean, you guys see that I'm, kind of all dressed for meetings and stuff like that. I mean, because the fact of the matter is, I had 2 really big takes in the NFL this week. If you watch the videos, one was to lock in Mosher, and the other, though, was to fade the KC passing game. So if you did the first thing, great. If you stopped listening to me after that, you're even smarter because you didn't fade the KC passing game like I did. And, you know what the rule is? I mean, if you fade the KC passing game, got to go to work the next day because someone's got to pay for that take. What can I tell you? Again, moving on to the NBA, which actually NBA was actually pretty decent this weekend. As we suspected, a lot of craziness as far as news went. But today could be no different. It's kind of an interesting slate because you have 2 really full slates, if you want to know the truth, kind of broken out, the MLK day slate and then the evening slate. We're just going to do the day slate now, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's start with the day slate.
All right, sounds good. Let me share my
Yeah, let's fire it up. But we're going to start off with Detroit and Washington with one of the
sounds
one
good.
of the monster games on the slate.
So my first, again, so you always like to ask, my first look at the slate. So fortunately, you get my fresh take because I've done my own work, but I haven't really listened to any of the crowd think, which is kind of good. You get a nice, neat little fresh, unbiased take from me. So like the first thing I kind of noticed in this slate that I looked at it, and I know we're going to start with the first game, but like all the way at the end of the day, there's a 240 like pick'em total game with guys that we like playing. So a lot of my desire would be to kind of play that game in principle, just because again, I like the late games because of the flexibility, and most people don't pay as much attention to those in their research because they run out of time and the usual type of stuff. And I know who I want to play in that game pretty much. So what I'm looking for in the slate is finding pivots. I don't even know if that team is even popular in the first place, but what I'm looking for is competition for my action from that game, because that game, at least from an brand perspective, the way I like to do is just someplace I'd like to go. So that's what I'm kind of thinking about as we go through these games. So if you want to start, let's just start with Detroit Washington, which on its surface is a pretty, you think is a pretty appealing situation, right? Because again, it's a high total, 235 or whatever it is, and kind of a low spread. So the next thing I would look for is to see if the guys that I want to play are priced to the point where I want to play them. So the interesting thing is Washington. Bradley Beal is really the main deal. Like, and figuring out what's going on with him is pretty important. I mentioned to Bobby before the show. I said, so could Bradley Beal this be the troll game? I said, is they really only playing 28 minutes? Is that the deal? And he's like, yeah, probably. And that's kind of the story. Like at some point, maybe they kind of let him loose. And I guess on the one hand, it would be nice to get ahead of that, right? And guess or predict when that's going to be. I just don't know if this is what I would, this is the day that I would try. Ooh, sorry about this. Try to make that happen, because the rest of the game doesn't really have as much of appeal. Like if the game were really easily stackable for me, I might make a case for making this the Bradley Beal control game. But aside from that, I don't think I'm going to do it. Other guys in Washington, I don't even know what to do. Like Jordan McRae, Isaiah, Davis Bertans, like none of them look to be that special. And
what if McRae doesn't play?
What's that?
What if McRae doesn't play?
If McRae doesn't play, he's considered questionable, huh?
Yeah, he's questionable. I think that just maybe like you actually get the 30 minutes out of Beal. And it's funny because a great way of looking at this game, I feel like, is there's 2 plays I really like in this game in the backcourt. I really like Derrick Rose and I really like Bradley Beal. The odd part is they're probably going to play a similar number of minutes, and it feels bizarre to pay the same price for Derrick Rose as it does for Bradley Beal. But you could play both of those guys. I don't know that I want to get really crazy, though, with this game. It just, other than Drummond, who I like a lot, and I think is probably as strong a center play as anybody, it feels like it feels very speculative to play this game, especially with not knowing, potentially about some guys like Marvin Bagley who will play later on. We just got to figure all that stuff out. So I don't know. As of right now, we might even have to revisit this game at the end to see how much you like it, because there's so, like you mentioned, there's so many. I mean, there's one really great game, but there's a lot of really good spots in the slate that I find myself sort of just gravitating towards Drummond and maybe a little bit of Beal, or a Beal Rose Drummond lineup altogether. Maybe throw one of those in a smaller buy-in, larger field tournament.
I'll tell
But I'm
you,
not in love with it.
Bobby, something interesting which I brought up the last time we spoke about a couple of slates ago. One thing to keep an eye on was that there would be players that are not going to be multi-position eligible anymore on DraftKings. They're being really tight about that. And one of them you kind of alluded to that kind of makes things a little tricky is Marvin Bagley. Like Marvin Bagley now is actually just center eligible on DraftKings, which means that if you do play, if you want to play someone like Drummond, then you have to really think about if you want to give up the Bagley value to do that. And likewise, if you want to play Bagley, you have to figure out if you want to give up the Drummond, raw points and good playness that he has. So, you would think that that Bagley would be like one of those guys that kind of give a break to and not make him a pure center in DraftKings. But he's I'm pretty sure is now only center eligible, which make things a little tricky.
Well, there's two guys I like as pivots off of him that are in later games, and they're actually in the same game. So what I would do is I would on DraftKings put Bagley in if you like him, which I do. And I know we're not at that game yet, but I think it's important.
In the utility, you mean?
And I think Bagley is power forward eligible still.
Oh, is he?
I think he is, yeah.
Okay.
I think he's power forward and center.
I thought that he was just
I've got it over here, but let me just take a quick look because I didn't actually use him in my original build.
Yeah, you're right. He is power forward center. That's my bad. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Anyway, so if you play him, what you do is, and you find out he's out, first of all, you can pivot over to Darius Garland at 5K, leaving 400 on the table, or you can pivot over to Elfrid Payton, and maybe you can find a nice little 2v2 switch. Both those guys, I think, are really strong plays as well. So I don't mind if you want to play Bagley, and then if by 2 we hear he's out, playing those guys. And I don't know that it would open up so much for the front court of Sacramento that you'd need to get pieces of it, but you certainly could if you stack most of the late games, which I think is a good way to go on this slate.
So, in summary from this game, I do like Drummond.
I like Drummond, yeah. I don't know how much. I think we're going to have to go through everything before I can figure out how much you don't want to play with anybody in this game.
Okay. All right. So it's funny. So I make 2 kind of shells to kind of get me going, and then I'm going to come back. One of them happened to have Drummond, but for no reason. All right. So let's move on. The next game I have is Toronto, Atlanta. And, okay. So my comments on this game are, I think, similar to what they were before with respect to Trae Young. I'm gonna stick to this idea for now. I suggested that the reason why one of the main reasons why they brought Teague over was to kind of protect their investment in Trae Young a little bit. For those of you who weren't there for the weekend, I commented that, as Bobby, you pointed out so perfectly, like a month or so ago, they were playing him like ridiculous amount of minutes for no reason. And the guy's not like a big guy. I mean, he's very, and he's not very, he's very fast. So he's going to get hurt a lot if you play him that way. And he's a real big part of their future. So why kill him like that? So I think that when they brought Teague over, I think it was one of their main reasons for doing that. And I did suggest that maybe minutes could get tapered as he kind of, became more familiar with the team, Teague. And, obviously this was blowout related also, but Trae Young did only play 27 minutes in the last game. And, it's been a while since that blowout game where he had him play 40, right?
Right.
So on a game like this, I mean, again, like you got to see what they're projecting Trae at to see if, if there's a lot of upside from that. Like if you're going to just count on Trae getting 36 minutes, I don't know if that's such a responsible thing to do, is to just count on him getting 36 minutes.
I agree.
So at 9,500, he's definitely getting a price decrease because I guess part of the perception of the matchup, whatever. Look, I still think he's very viable tournament play. I don't know what his ownership is going to be, and he's fine. The other guy on the Atlanta, which I brought up to you pre-show, which we could, bandy about a little bit, would be DeAndre Hunter, just for no other reason. I mean, I think he's, projects okay, and he's 4,100, and he's if he doesn't get into foul trouble, he's going to be fine. So he's the other guy from Atlanta. And on Toronto, I really just kind of didn't like anybody at all.
Yeah, I'm going to keep this one really, really short and easy. The only interest I have on anybody from Atlanta is DeAndre Hunter, and even that's very minimal interest in my part. Like maybe if I was playing a bunch of lineups, I'd have him in 15% or so. That would probably be the maximum. I think that Siakam is a phenomenal tournament play. He's the guy I'm probably going to
Siakam. Okay.
on. Yeah. I'm not buying this. So the minutes are funny because he was coming back from an injury. He was on a back-to-back. So, of course, he didn't play. And also, he didn't not only did not play minutes, they dismantled Washington, so they had to put him on a minutes limit the next night. Or anyway, he basically had to play less minutes because of the back-to-back. You see that in the game he played, his second game back, he played 30 minutes. He played almost 30 minutes his first game back. I think in the 30-plus minute range against an Atlanta team, Siakam at 7,500, this could be a guy who easily gets you 50 in this spot. I don't like it as much when everybody's healthy for Toronto, which they are. But Siakam is still a guy we were paying 8,700 for good reason in spots like this, or even higher earlier this year. And I think that he could end up being it could be a slate breaking type of a game for him. I mean, he suits the up and down style of play, the non-rebounding ability from Atlanta, the weak defense, the playing in transition. Everything just screams Siakam. The amount of the Atlanta attacks the rim and they turn the ball over. You just feel like he's going to fill up the stat sheet in a lot of different ways. And I think he's a really, really, really strong play that won't get the ownership he deserves. Although it's interesting, I'm looking at certain other people's rankings are a lot higher on him than the projection numbers are. People seem to have a similar thought that I do, that he might be one of the top guys. And I really think he's an interesting tournament play.
Bobby, really feeling it. That was awesome. And the thing that about that I think people should really take is something you said in the middle of that was that, just the way that the game could flow, the way Atlanta types plays, it really suits Siakam as far as, getting in transition and doing all that stuff that you talked about. Because again, when you're looking for upside, especially like above and beyond, projections and things like that, I do think that projections don't take that type of thing into account as much as maybe they could. So while they do take pace into account, they don't really take into account like the particular type of pace that Atlanta kind of creates. So yeah, maybe that's the thing. Then the other thing you just mentioned, which kind of you have to research, is like you said, he might not project all that well, but his ownership might be a little higher than the usual types of guys that project that way. So it's that is interesting to see what happens.
I would be willing to make a bet that his ownership in the 555 is double what it is in the $15 today. That's my bet. Now, regardless if that's 5 versus 2.5% or 20 versus 10, that's my guess, is that the higher the buy-in.
Yeah, well, you're not getting paid for that. Like, you're not going to get paid on that bet if one's 5 and one's 2.5. I'm sorry. That's not double.
The overall point of what I'm saying is
I know what you mean.
The better players are going to.
It's a sharper play.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
right.
Now we got one where we're definitely going to have some interest in.
Yeah, well, us and everybody else. So, all right. So Philly, Brooklyn. DraftKings doesn't fall asleep at the wheel all too often, but they may have on this one. I guess we could do either one first, but Philly first. Same guys that we've been playing, if you want to know the truth. Simmons, Horford, Harris, and to a lesser extent Richardson. I still think all are in play. They are, they project pretty well. They're in that kind of matchup that has that extra, the extra oomph to it. Let's put it that way. And it is going to be, rates to be a pretty close game. And you have a real natural run back on the other side if you want to play even one or two of these Sixers guys. So I think this is actually this is shaping up to be a game that's very, very stackable and very, obviously a really, really good game to play, because on the other side, Brooklyn, Kyrie at 7,800 is just a phenomenal price. He's going to be highly owned. How highly owned, I don't know. But he certainly is going to be highly owned. So again, my normal caution is you are going to play him and you're going to run him back with Philly guys who are probably going to be somewhat popular also. You have to find a way to pivot elsewhere. But in and of itself, Kyrie looks to be just an awesome play. Everybody else on the Nets, the usual guys. Dinwiddie's just all right. Jared Allen is always, for me, kind of a good guy to put in a tournament with them stacking. And not to steal your take here, but I usually do when I stack the Nets, I usually do two things or maybe three. I usually play the point guard, whoever that is. It used to be Dinwiddie, now it's Irving, with Allen because of the the pick and roll stuff they can get generated. And I always pick one of the three wings. And now it's one of four wings, I guess, with LeVert back. So I would pick one of Harris, LeVert, Prince, or Temple to go with that. So between all four of those, I'll let you talk about that. But I guess there's one that could be a kind of a standout among all those four.
Yeah, I think that Joe Harris is like the cash game you play. Just 3,800, even, Also, I mean, it's worth noting in this game we don't have DeAndre Jordan today. I think that gives Jared Allen a boost to being definitely in play. I think Karis LeVert, if you want to take a long shot, I just feel really bad about those minutes. But I mean, like we talked about a little bit with Beal, and it's not quite the same with LeVert, obviously. But the guy's going to start breaking slates even if he plays 28 minutes at this price. It's just they haven't figured it all out with Kyrie yet. So I'm just still going to lean on the Kyrie Harris part of this game, and I actually feel like they're both like cash game plays. And then on the other side, I think you have another guy you can run it. The guy I would run it back with. I don't think anybody on Philly is going to be popular except for Ben Simmons and maybe a little bit Josh Richardson. But I think that Ben Simmons is the one people will go after. So I like Ben Simmons plenty, but I think that there's other plays on this slate than playing just him and Kyrie at high ownership. I'm still having a very hard time not being ahead of the field on Kyrie, even if it's like 50 or 60%. It just feels like too big of a. I mean, he could literally, you're dead with it. He could make it so you're dead without him. He could put up 60 fantasy points here.
For sure.
But, you know, he could also put up 45, and there's a lot of other guys at 40, you know, at this similar price that could outperform him. So I like Kyrie a ton. I'll have a lot of exposure to him. I'll have a lot of exposure to Harris, and I'll have more than the field exposure to Jared Allen. And then it's really just Ben Simmons on the other side for me. But Kyrie is definitely one of the priority core plays.
So this is not our thing usually, but if you had to guess, like in either the high buy-in tournaments or the cash games, you know, which I don't play, Kyrie would probably be the most popular guy throughout the slates, right? I mean, you would think, right?
Yeah, I would imagine. I'd be surprised if he wasn't.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's next? So Sacramento at Miami. So as we kind of alluded to a couple of times, you really got to figure out. Well, I'm sure you'll figure it out. I'm sure they'll tell you, but whether Bagley's playing or not. Now, unfortunately, I really haven't looked at the FanDuel roster. Is it the same games on FanDuel? Because FanDuel sometimes messes around with these split slates, and I really haven't taken a look at it yet.
Yeah, it's the same game. I just built one shell lineup over there. I'm just gonna take a quick look. I'm pretty sure it's all the same games.
Okay. But they didn't
throw out. I'm sorry. They include all the games.
Oh, so there you go. Okay, exactly.
Yeah.
So they just have one big slate. All right.
Yeah. I forgot about that because I actually played some players from the later games, so I probably should have remembered that.
Okay. All right. So the real thing is whether
I'm sorry. I'm looking at the FanDuel list that starts at 2 p.m. They have the FanDuel slate as 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. Sorry, 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. So all
5 to 10.
Yeah, all the games we just talked about are not on the main slate on FanDuel.
Okay.
But the main slate, the ones we're talking about now, is where the main slate starts.
So as I said, FanDuel's a little different than Draftkings.
Yes, you nailed it.
Okay. All right. So whether Bagley plays or not, it's a really big deal because if he plays, he's rates to be just a tremendously good value. And I'm not saying you can't fade him. I mean, he's Bagley. I mean, he's possibly could get hurt again, whatever. But 5,400 for him. If he's going to play without restriction, I mean, is very, very strong. I don't care who they're playing against. And on FanDuel, you know, he's probably cheaper there, as I said, as he usually is. So he's now, if he doesn't play, I mean, are we then going back to this other stuff? Like, are we then going back to like Harry Giles and Dwayne Dedman and making Bjelica like a really core play or something? Oh, Bjelica's up to 6,800. Wow.
Yeah, it's hard.
Oh my God. So again, but I think that is something you have to keep an eye on. And I have to say that if there's no news on Bagley, this is going to be one of those I don't think I play on FanDuel, except like you said, they don't start till 5 o'clock, so you'll know.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah.
I guess you'll know on them because I don't know. It's the same foot that he hurt. I don't know. I think the whole thing's kind of fishy. Like he'd be a guy, by the way, that if he were going to be like really super chalky, he'd be a guy that I would fade. I just would. The whole thing just seems a little fishy to me. But he does look. If he's going to, I'll put it to you this way: if he's going to play 30 minutes, then he's a good play. Okay, that's the best I can do.
I totally agree. But I also don't think I don't find him to be a must-have on this slate. I do think he's a really strong play, but it's not like this is a good matchup. The minutes, there's definitely downside for the minutes that he plays. So I don't know. It's at really high ownership. It's just going to be a matter of where you want. I like him individually, but do you want to play a guy at really high ownership, especially if we have some real questions about whether or not he's going to play, or how he's going to play. I don't think we need to play the other stuff though from Sacramento. If we heard like Dedmon was starting, or if we heard something like that, or something different happened, and I don't know, somehow
that could happen though.
In the mix. It could happen, but that's the only way I would consider anybody else.
Well, Dedmon. I was about to say Dedmon's really cheap. I thought Dedmon was going to be like $3K or something. He is. He's 3,100.
Yeah, but I mean, we need to know Bagley's out, and we need to know that he's starting. In my opinion, maybe not. We may not need to know that he's starting. He might just.
Definitely don't need to know if he's starting.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. All right. So before we leave this game, I mean, again, just because we're here, I mean, if Bagley's out, would you take a flyer on Harry Giles again?
No, not on this slate. I don't think.
We're done. All right. Miami, I like.
Starting, I would.
What's that?
If they announced he was starting, I would.
Right. Well,
that's about it. Yeah.
All right. So Miami, I like Butler.
Yeah, I think Butler is fine. I probably am not going to end up getting to him much today because I like some other plays better. But yeah, Butler and Bam both seem to be solid plays. I'm just not probably going to play either of them.
Hey, did you notice that Bogdanovich is back playing? How did he do the other day?
He played 20 some odd minutes. He played well, but like he's not like not a play we can make yet.
Okay, just on the lookout. That's
yeah,
it.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the next one you have on your? Okay, Chicago, Milwaukee. Right, so here's what I'm doing. Again, just because I'm just going to do it. In this game, I'm going to play a lineup or two with Levine and Giannis in it. I just think it makes a lot of sense. It's a 14-point spread. So again, this is kind of classic, correlation tournament stuff that, if you want to get upside from Giannis's minutes, it's going to have to be because, Chicago, not one of two ways, either because Giannis is terrible and that's how the game stays close, or because Levine is awesome and that's how the game stays close. So for a tournament, I'll take a shot. I'm playing a Levine with Giannis thing. The only other two things I will say about this game is I do think two totally different things. Number one is I do think that Giannis is a very, very tough fade here. I shouldn't say that because like the slate might make him fadeable, but just on its surface, the reason why he's a tough fade for me is because, again, he's projecting really well on only 29, 30 minutes of projected minutes. And it's one of those weird things. I kind of brought this up in the Celtic game the other day where it's the reason why it's tough to fade is that, Chicago has been playing good defense and they're a really good defensive team this year. And if they really try their best to kind of limit Giannis and just scheme him or do something, and it works enough to keep the game close, then all you get is less Giannis early and more minutes of him later. You know what I mean? So it's kind of difficult for Giannis to not have a really, really good floor here, So that's why I find it kind of difficult to fade him. I probably will in decent amount of lineups, but he is very, very tough to do as far as I'm concerned. The only other thing I'll bring up from Chicago is, because we brought it up last time, is if you want to take a shot at a three-point shooter against Milwaukee, you can try Kobe White. Yeah,
it's I have a little more interest in the other guys in Chicago. I think that if I was going to play anybody, it'd be Markkanen, Satoransky, or Levine. Markkanen and Dunn, Satoransky, or Levine. Dunn and Satoransky's price is low enough to where there's plenty of upside. And the funny part is, as good a team as Milwaukee is defensively, they just run you out of the building. So these guys are going to have to do more in this kind of spot. It's sort of like, playing a team in the NFL that's like the Chiefs. It's going to force you to have to use more of your guys on offense or whatever. I am not as high on Giannis as you are. I think that he gets his here. I just find my builds going elsewhere. And I think we'll probably have some injury information that will probably open it up where Giannis becomes an easy play. But I would prefer taking the shot on Harden in what I think will be a closer game than Giannis. And that's just sort of where I'm at. I don't know that they'll need Giannis to go crazy here. I just feel like he ends up so often around that, 50 to 60. And hey, that's fine. 60 is fine even at his price. But there's just a lot of other ways you can build with multiple guys who are 4.5 that can go out there and get you, you put three guys like that together versus Giannis and a cheapie. I feel like I can get more value the other way, or 5.4. That's just
the other thing that you mentioned also. I mean, when you're comparing him at the same price to Harden, I mean, especially in a tournament, it's a little easier to make the case for Harden to get the 100.
Yeah, but also Harden's going to have like 1/5 the ownership, maybe even worse. Like,
Oh, is that true?
Yeah, nobody's going to play Harden. Everybody's going to play Giannis.
Oh, okay.
I think Giannis.
Never mind.
Just based on
Never mind.
based on projections, it looks like Giannis is going to be. I don't know. I would have to guess he's going to be in the 30 to 40% range.
Yeah, I'm looking. Yeah, I guess you're right. I'm looking at this here. Look at this run, 20% or so, even over here. And Harden, boy, I can't even find him.
Yeah,
Harden less than 10%. Is that real? All right, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, I think it's interesting.
All right, sounds good. So to redo my take on this game, I would play a Giannis Levine stack, but I don't think maybe I'd play Giannis on his own in a GP.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think of the Kobe White thing? Not really.
I'm not going to go for it on this slate, but I certainly understand it. If it was a small slate, I would take that shot.
Okay, so OKC against Houston, as we just kind of alluded to, I'm kind of with you. I don't even know if what this means, but I think that Harden's a tremendous player. I mean, if he's going to be 10%, I mean, we could talk about all the reasons why you think he's a good play. Sure, why not? So first of all, when they played at Oklahoma City last time, Harden was just atrocious. You know, it was Westbrook's game back, and they got wrecked also in that game. I think that Harden could just be in the mood to just light these people up in this game. He's also coming off some really, really pedestrian games, to say the least. So that's going to drive his ownership down. And hell, I mean, he's always has 100-point upside, and you know, it's just a question of not even a question of anything. 10% ownership, I think it's tremendous. I don't even want to go, and these other Houstons, I don't even want to go with Tucker. I guess 3,800 if you need him, fine. But I don't know if I'm going to go with Westbrook. I really think Harden's a better play here. So I would probably go with him. And then on the Oklahoma City side, you're going to have to talk to me about this Hamidou Diallo thing, only because I think he's going to get ownership and he's going to pop in a lot of optimals. And I just get nervous about playing kind of low usage guys are just on the court there. And I hope I don't need him. Let's put it that way, because I really don't want to play it. How about that?
Yeah, I'm annoyed by it as well. I think you prefer Joe Harris over him for sure, who's 200 more. But he's going to play a lot of minutes in this game. There's a chance they could end up using a little more Baisley. I don't know, though. It's as of right now, he might play the most minutes on this team in this game. I think the real play in this game is Chris Paul. Plays well when they need him. That's when he tends to put up his big games. And just at this price range, I just feel like there's so often you're going to see him in the 40+ range in this kind of a matchup against his former, going back to Houston. They got rid of him for this team, all that stuff. Doesn't like Harden. I'm going to take a shot with Chris Paul. I think that he's actually going to have some ownership because he's at his price. He makes a lot of sense. So he's a guy who I want to get some exposure to. We got to realize when Houston plays, you got to give the other team a boost. It's not about them being bad defensively so much as playing really, really fast. So a combination of things makes it so you want to try and attack the other spots. But I don't see anyone especially that interesting except for Chris Paul. I think you can make an argument for Shea or for Gallinari, actually, who's been really good lately. But I don't find myself excited by anyone except for Chris Paul. And on the Houston side, I definitely am a little bit more on the Harden side, just like you. I don't mind the idea of playing Westbrook at no ownership either, though. He's really taken a lot of the reins recently offensively, and that's always going to be Harden's team offensively. But Westbrook has been the better player over the last month, and I don't think that's going to necessarily continue, especially if Houston wants to win a title. But I think you can expect a big performance from one of these guys, and I would, just like you, lean Harden.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm going to end up.
This is crazy, man. Harden at 12K on these types of slates when he was going nuts, was 40% owned, and now we got him at 11K and he's 7% owned, or 5% or whatever he ends up at, 10% even. I feel like it's a good time to jump back on him.
All right, let's move on. Hopefully this next game is going to be quick, but maybe not. All right, so Orlando against Charlotte. I like one guy. I got one guy from each side. I'll make it sort of quick. So on the Charlotte side, I think that Devontae Graham is always. I keep saying this. He always seems to have that upside, and every time I play him, I just seem to get him on the day that he doesn't have the upside. I guess. I think I might have been there for the 22 and the 13, and not the 52 and the 44, whatever. But that's all right. That's part of GPPs, whatever. Mm-hmm. And if you want him on a day where he's going to be 0% owned, I think this is the day to do it. Let's put it that way. Mm-hmm. Playing against Orlando and Kyrie just a little bit more. So it's going to be tough to get him there. But he would be the one guy again. I would try if I were going to try. And if I were going to do that, I would want to probably do something on the Orlando side. And Vooch looks to be in a tremendous spot here. He looks to be a really, really good play. So I would probably go with him.
Yeah, I really like the Vooch call. This it's hard though. Like I'll go through at the end and say my list of what players I'll have and sort of what kind of ownerships, because there's so many good spots on this slate. Like if you're going to play the Harden angle on the other game, it's hard to all of a sudden then talk about playing Vooch in this game. We love Kyrie. You know what I mean? It becomes more difficult. But I do think Vooch is on his own just a really good play. I also think Aaron Gordon, as horrible as he's been, and I'm not going to do it tonight, but if there was a matchup that I would just think would scream that this should be a big game for him, this would be the kind of matchup. This team's athletic wings that are sort of combo forwards and can sort of play big. Like they just sort of eat up this Charlotte team. And at some point I'm waiting for that game from Gordon, but probably not going to get there tonight. I do think on Charlotte, there's one other play other than Devontae Graham who's always in play. I think Miles Bridges, I feel like a broken record. You know me, I'm always going to talk about Miles Bridges. 4.7, going to play 30-plus minutes, assuming the game stays close, which I think it will. You're talking about a guy who probably ends up with somewhere between 25 and 38 or 40 or somewhere in that range. That's just sort of his range, like when the games are close. And he might play as many as 36 minutes if that's the case. So I'm going to lean on just keep playing the guy and betting on his talent. And hopefully he keeps making me money. I've seen to catch him on the right nights mostly. And I just think it's a pricing point play. Like he's one of the better values out there that probably won't get as much ownership as he should.
Who's going to get no ownership because of his price range is this Pascal Siakam that we talked about.
I don't know, man. I feel like people are a little sharper.
All right, we'll see.
Okay. I hope you're right.
We'll see. All right. So moving on to New York, Cleveland, which again, as we talked about before we went on, could be kind of the sneaky thing to get off those other games. I don't even know how popular these other games are really going to be anyway, but New York, Cleveland certainly has some appeal just because neither team plays any defense at all, and it's going to be, rates to be a close spread. Let's see if we can get them right. So on the Knicks side, the three guys that I would look to would be the three guys I've been looking to. That'd be Marcus Morris, Randall, and Peyton. All three of them look to be okay. Peyton tilts me a little bit, but Randall you could always count on for his minutes and his max effort. So Randall he's another 7,700 guy. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of these guys. Yeah. So Randall 7,700, I like him, and Morris would be my other guy. And on the Cleveland side, Kevin Love, and then for me, you'd have to pick between. Oh boy, I know exactly what you do. You could play Kevin Love. You could even play Larry Nance again. And then you could pick between Sexton and Garland or Thompson. Oh, you're right. And this game is really interesting. I can make a case for 5 Cavaliers in this spot. I mean, what are you going to do here?
Players in this game in one stack. Obviously, I'm probably going to edit some things, but I think that this game has that real, like, the usage is condensed enough between the guys that we know who it's going to be. I feel like between Garland, Sexton, Love, we know that's where the offense is going to come from Cleveland. You get, I don't love that I'm playing Kevin Love with Nance in some lineups because it's not a naturally good match. You know what I mean? Because Tristan Thompson and everything. So I do like Nance a little bit, but I think that if he gets too much ownership, just beware. Like Tristan Thompson got ejected from one of those games in the first minute recently. Just don't go crazy with it. But I do love everybody on the Cleveland side, and everybody else on the Cleveland side I plan to have well more than the field. And I would rank them Garland, Sexton, then Love for me on the Cleveland side. Those are my three favorites in that order. I like Garland a lot tonight. I also
Yeah,
think the other. Go ahead.
yeah, I'm almost.
Yeah, I really like Morris, Randall, and Payton. I think if I had to pick one that I like the most, I would probably pick. Wow, it's actually really tough for me. I guess it would be Morris, but I really like Randall too. So I'm sort of struggling between the two of those guys. I also like Mitch Robinson as a tournament play. I think if you want to spend down for a guy with upside still, played 30 and 24 minutes in the last two games. I like him on FanDuel too, where he's 4.9. Don't know how much of him I'll have, but I do think he's definitely in the mix. So again, really trying to target this game.
Yeah, this could be the sneak.
And you can
Kevin Love, 7,900. Yet another guy between 7,500 and 7,900.
You can play it like a little 2v2 or a 2-1 or whatever, and then play one of the hardened lineups if you want to too. Like there's a lot you can do with enough value in this game. Like you can play the Peyton Morris angle and then run it back with Kevin Love, or run it back with even Sexton and Garland. I actually don't mind that, or Sexton or Garland and Nance or something. And then you've got like a cheap little mini stack and exposure to a game that we like, and you can still go up and spend up elsewhere.
Oh, look at this.
Yeah.
Before I forget. I'm telling you, this is what happens before I forget.
You might have to de-chalkify it a little bit, but.
What's that?
You may have to de-chalkify that one a little bit.
You think so? Yeah, I'm going to de-chalkify one with.
I
this
think
one has
everybody
Irving.
in this Cleveland-New York game, like I think there's going to be a lot of players who have some ownership.
Oh, this has Irving in it. Okay, yeah. This has Irving also.
But it's a really good game though. Like it's my second favorite game to target. It might actually be my favorite game to target just because of where the pricing is. The other game that's obvious is the one we're going to talk about in just a minute.
Okay, so let's go to the game, which is like they say, don't be so excited if it's if you get something good out of the early games. Well, I shouldn't say that because all these games start at 5:00, right? Oh my God, This is going to be nuts. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All 6 of these games start identically. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's going to be a lot of fun. So this is kind of like the nut game if you think about it from a purity perspective. I mean, you got a big total. You got a tight spread, and at least what I'm looking at, I mean, I know where I want to go. See, the good thing is as I mentioned, every single slate, Memphis always projects a little crappy, so they don't get highly owned. Problem is, this is such a high total game that I have a feeling that they're going to be they have to get some ownership. But again, there's a lot of really good plays on this slate. So who knows? But I'll try it. So let's try. I don't know. Let's try who's playing well. Well, first of all, we have to figure out if Holiday is playing. What is he saying now? He's questionable.
We have to. Yeah, we literally have to know, and that makes it.
Yeah. So here's the deal. If Holiday plays, everything I'm about to say is a little less, powerful, but not necessarily that less powerful. So the first thing is that Brandon Ingram is just, he's the man right now, right? So he looks to be like a really, really good play. And, yeah, if Holiday comes back, it just has to take away from his usage some, but I'm not sure how much. Then the other guys, again, assuming Drew doesn't play, is Hart looks to be a tremendous value, as does, Lonzo looks to be a really good play. Then you could maybe play Favors again. Again, like the normal New Orleans starters are like kind of all in play here. And on the Memphis side, the same guys that we talk about a lot, but I can be a little more specific here. So between Valanciunas and Jaren Jackson, I'll let you determine which one's better, but I only like to play one of those two together. Maybe that's not 100% necessary, but that's what I like to do. And the other thing I like to do on Memphis is pick, again, those wings and only take one of them. So the guys like Jay Crowder, who I think is always has a lot of upside, and Dylan Brooks, who, looks pretty expensive, but he always has, a decent amount of upside. I'll try one or two of them. And I like to play Morant, even though, again, he's going to project to be probably kind of crappy at 8,100. But again, it's part of a stack. I do like to have the point guard where possible. So I will definitely play him as part of a stack. I'm certainly not going to play Morant as a one-off or anything like that. But I'll certainly include him in my game stacks, depending on how many I play.
Yeah, I don't think you can ever use Moran as a one-off here, but I do think you could use him in a stack. I really like anybody. Like if Holiday plays, I think they're just going to throw him out there and play him his minutes. So I think that he's an incredible play if he plays. If he doesn't play, I will be all over Ingram and Lonzo Ball. I just don't see how I can't be in a ceiling type matchup and environment for them. And my favorite run back is by far Jaren Jackson. There's not really anybody close
Interesting.
on the side.
Why is that?
Well, first of all, he's going to play more minutes more often than Valanciunas does. He's at least at a minute ceiling. What's hard to play about any Memphis guys is none of them have that high of a minute ceiling compared to other teams because they play so many players. So Jaren Jackson in 30 minutes, though, in what's the ceiling type matchup, I think he could easily go nuts here. I do like Valanciunas too, but I just prefer taking a little bit of a discount and playing Jaren Jackson, who I expect to score have a very similar output to Valanciunas tonight. I think Jaren Jackson in this matchup could not even play that well and still end up with a 35 to 40 game. I don't think that he needs to play that well in this type of pace environment. They're going to leave guys open for three. He's an excellent three-point shooter. I also think Jay Crowder, if you want to mix in a part of a stack that no one will play, kind of think he's interesting here, like going to get a lot of open three-point looks again. And we've seen Jay Crowder explode a few times. Like people don't really think of him as that high ceiling guy, but he put up 60, a few days
Sure
ago.
did.
So I like the idea of maybe playing those two, Jaren Jackson and Crowder, and then obviously we have to wait on the Holiday news. If Holiday's playing, he would be my favorite play on New Orleans.
Really?
I think at his price, just assuming that he gets the minutes, and I think he will, because they're trying to win every game right now, right before Zion gets back soon. I think this is the last game without Zion, by the way. So that's sort of how, if he's out, though, I do think you want exposure to Hart for sure, and then especially Lonzo and Brandon Ingram. I love those two.
This Jaren Jackson Jr. just his fouls are just so freaking frustrating.
It's frustrating. It's
what do you have, 3 fouls in the first quarter yesterday? I don't know.
He's not for the faint of heart. Like this is what he does, But realistically, double-digit field goals in every game except one in his last 2 months, basically.
Right.
Basically doing enough out there. The rebounding numbers are down a little bit because Valanciunas has been good in games and he can just be a rebounding machine. But I still think there's rebounding upside, especially in this type of up-tempo environment. And the steal block upside is very high too.
All right. So again, going through this again, it's interesting to me when you go through game by game, because then you trying to think about the stuff that you talked about beforehand, right? So you think about the earlier games, and I am curious to see where ownership comes in on these guys. I still think that Irving is a very, very difficult. I shouldn't say that. I was about to say he's a difficult fade, but now that I think about it, I mean, in GPPs, I mean, he could get 40. You know what I mean? Like, and as we discussed, there's a lot of these $7,500 guys that may not look to have as great of a median as Kyrie, but can certainly pop. So I don't think that Irving for me is somebody I necessarily have to have. You know what I mean? Like, and it's funny because when I first scanned, okay, Irving's a lock, whatever it is. And yeah, I mean, if I were playing cash games, he'd probably be the first guy I'd put. I'd probably put, you know what I would do? I'd probably put him and Bagley if you were playing in. It's like my top two. It's my top two guys. But maybe that's why I don't play cash. Maybe you're not supposed to play injured guys in cash games. But anyway.
I think Bagley is a cash game play.
Oh, okay. So I think that I could fade Irving if he becomes too popular. And I'm certainly not going to play him in every lineup. And I think that I'm going to go back to what I was saying. I think that there's a lot of ways you could go, and there's some sneakies. Like I actually feel your Cleveland, New York thing is going to be sneakier than you think it's going to be. Like
I hope so.
I don't think people are going to get on that thing as much as you might think they will. And the Memphis New Orleans game, I find it difficult to believe that's not going to get some ownership. But maybe, you know what? You can make case for so many of these guys throughout these games that maybe it's going to be one of those cool days where no one really gets that much ownership. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I would go back to what I said. So I would go back to that Memphis game. I'm still going to do that Chicago Milwaukee game, just that 1v1 just in case. And I'm into this Harden thing. I am.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump real quick and just talk about my favorite plays in the slate.
Go for it.
The person I have the most ownership of right now is Kyrie Irving, even though
Yep.
I may pivot off that as we go on. In the next tier, I have two guys who I just love as plays overall. I love Darius Garland, and then I love Siakam as a tournament play. So I've mentioned him. And then the next tier is the Jaren Jackson, Joe Harris, Lonzo Ball, Drew Holiday, Brandon Ingram. It's obviously going to depend. Those three I've just got in there. It depends on whether if Holiday's playing, I'll definitely have less interest in the other two. Then I go down to on the same tier: Harden, Paul, Bagley, Peyton, Marcus Morris. That's sort of where I make it. Oh, and Kevin Love just beneath them. But those are the guys I'm mostly playing.
Yeah, I'll tell you, all you need is, as we go over, is a couple of these guys. Like Garland. I even you look at his game logs, I just can't imagine he's gonna get more than 5% ownership. I just can't imagine. And whenever I say that, you always say, well, why not? He's like really good. I'm not saying that he's not a good player. I'm just saying that I just don't think that people are going to do it. You know what I mean? So that's good for you. You know what I mean? so that's good.
Yeah,
for
I think they will today a little bit, but we'll see.
I will. We're gonna bet a soda on 8%.
Okay.
8%, and you'll take the over, and I'll take the under.
Yeah, and I hope that you win. That's the funny part.
Exactly. That's the beautiful hedge, right?
Exactly.
But I have a feeling the amount of volume you're going to play is you're kind of rooting to have to pay me the soda for sure, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to keep reinforcing that I'm bumping up a little bit is Elf Payton.
Ooh, interesting.
I just think that with no Barrett in this matchup and against this Cleveland backcourt who've just been torched by other point guards, I feel like there's minutes upside on his 28 projected minutes too. And then I also think Marcus Morris I might want to even get even more exposure to. I just want to throw that out there because
What's the rest of this point guard situation for the Knicks? Are all these guys still hurt?
Well, they've got their guys. I mean, we never know who they can always roll in there, but it's not the priority for them to roll someone in there like it was before. Like they still have Ntilikina who's going to play, but only projected for 16 minutes, and then who knows, they'll throw Trier in there. Like they're going to let Peyton play the minutes unless he does something stupid or unless somebody they start running without him or something like that. I think Peyton's going to get the work, so I'm going to take that shot. And also, I mean, you talk about just upside. He's got massive, massive upside for this at this price.
Well, this is going to be your revenge. Not your revenge, because you really didn't get a chance to play all the Christmas slate that you wanted, right?
Yeah.
So this is going to be, your big day slate, paying you all the money, hopefully.
I hope so, bud. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in with us. We are going to get this out so we can go and get you another video on tonight's slate. And for Sheets, I'm Bobby. We will see you at the top of the leaderboards. Good luck, guys.